Welcome to the Acquisition HQ podcast, where we interview seasoned operators of companies anywhere between 2 to 15 million in EBITDA. We also are providing education for the mergers and acquisition professionals, as well as your capital providers. And today we've got a special guest, Ryan Landry. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to read your bio off here. Ryan Landry is a seasoned operator, investor, and growth strategist with a deep experience in organic growth and M&A across professional services. After leading multiple acquisitions and selling his largest division in 2023, Ryan moved into EdTech SaaS portfolio investing company. He now leads Landjet, a premier transportation brand scaling nationally through franchising. A Chapman University graduate, Ryan is an active member of the YPO and an alumni of Harvard Business School owner/president management program. Today, he advises founders on operations, growth, capital, and EBITDA expansion. That's quite a bio.
Still learning.
Well, I think that's, every day we're learning, right? And, that's why we shoot these podcasts. That's why we're obviously connecting with you as the seasoned operator out there. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the things that you learned through some of the acquisitions that you did make while you had your previous company. The do's, the don'ts.
Yeah. All right. So this, I guess the first acquisition story is going to start with the acquisition that didn't happen.
Perfect.
We had a very elegant opportunity to acquire a business, expand into another state, another region, really catalyze our growth and our footprint. And we elected not to proceed with the acquisition because we felt that we didn't have the right team in place to execute it. And that's when we decided that we needed to focus on leveling up our staff. At that time, we hired an executive coach to work with everyone who was an executive leader as well as a mid-level manager. We felt that we would have been biting off more than we could chew if we were to proceed with that acquisition. So ironically, we kind of found ourselves in the situation where we're the cobbler's kid with no shoes. We were running a corporate training and learning and development company, yet we weren't really developing our own people. And so we decided to pull the plug on the acquisition and really focus on developing ourselves and making sure that when the next acquisition opportunity does arise, that we know that we're not going to throw the baby away with the bathwater. Mm-hmm. We're going to be able to continue to execute our core business as well as not just acquire, but integrate the new business into our culture. And so that's really where my M&A, I think, learnings began. Then we actually started to do M&A. And our first one, we were excited the night before, and then it was about 3 months of hell. We were not prepared. We learned along the way. We had our bumps and our bruises, but what we did is we had a debrief. And so that's when we started to build our acquisition playbook. And so we learned the do's, the don'ts. We wrote everything down. Where we did have gaps, we knew what we needed to do to fill. And then every acquisition after that, and I'm not one of these guys who's done hundreds of them. I've only done about a handful. But everyone got smoother and smoother and smoother to the point where we had this flawless recipe, and it was just real easy. It was real turnkey. And the interesting thing is we had sold off our assets. The last company that we sold to, I went on board with. And if I had to do a debrief on that acquisition, I think where part of the failures or shortcomings happened was that same thing. It was that integration piece. Mm-hmm. The acquisition was beautiful on paper for both sides, but the integration is really what caused the headache and the heartache.
Let's go deeper into that integration and what actually prompted you to pull back on making that initial acquisition, right? Because you said that you saw some areas that you needed to grow and maybe mature to as an organization, and what actually drew you back from making that initial purchase?
We were short on talent. If we were to go make that other acquisition, I think at the executive leadership level, we were pretty solid, but it was that next level below that if we're to go proceed with the acquisition, resources, you know, um, physical, fiscal, mental resources were going to get pulled from the core business. And then what was going to happen? And we didn't really have I guess what we called it is a bench program. We didn't have a bench program. And so after that, what we did is we focused on establishing our next bench of managers and future corporate leaders. If we would have moved forward, I think we would have stretched ourselves way too thin. Day-to-day stuff would have gotten dropped, and we couldn't afford to not have a flawless execution. So we decided to pull it back, focus on developing our people. After all, what I mentioned earlier, we need to be the cobbler's kid with shoes.
Yes.
And so we gotta eat what we put down. And so talent is one of the biggest things. Now I've done a fair amount of investing for a family office here. One of the questions I always ask these new companies that they're looking to get some of our capital is, do you have any talent gaps on the team? That is critical. We're growth equity investors, and whether it's M&A or organic or inorganic growth, like talent is key. I mean, at the end of the day, and I'm sure people are going to want to debate me for this, but I think the only core competitive advantage an organization has is its talent, because at the end of the day, so many people can replicate a similar widget. And so I think your talent is really going to be your differentiator. So I think talent is key. And obviously, I've got a little bit of that talent DNA after being in the corporate training and education space.
One thing you said, and I think is really important for you guys out there to catch, is he said playbook. And you can't move forward without actually having some systematized, like programmatic, playbook that you can follow upon, that acquisition, or whether you're going to sell your company as well. Can you run us through some of the attributes or things that you placed into that playbook that you found to be helpful in making you guys successful upon your next purchase?
Yeah, our first attempt at an acquisition, it was very much so who's on first, what's on second, I don't know what's on third. We knew the business that we were acquiring. It was kind of the same business that we did. It was just in a different region, and we felt like it was going to be easy. But and there's this other phrase. It's not mine, but I've heard it years ago, and I love it. What got you here won't get you there. So when we were a small company, I'd say 5-6 million in revenue, 50-ish employees, all in Southern California, that's one way to operate. But once you double and you go into 2 states and 3 states, HR and labor laws are different. Healthcare costs are going to be different. IT is different. We used to have IT that would just drive around all of our offices, our 3 offices in Southern California. Well, now we had to, have this virtual kind of IT service and an SLA program that we had to integrate. So we experienced all the growing pains, and they were great growing pains to have. But a small $5 million organization with 50 employees is going to act very differently than a $10 million 100-employee organization, which will be very different than a several hundred employee organization, that's doing hundreds of millions. It's just part of the growing process, and everyone's going to have different experiences. I've not had the opportunity to run 1,000+ workforce, but there's someone who can educate me on the do's and don'ts of that. And until I get myself in that situation, it's going to be hard for me to implement that playbook, but those things exist out there. So the playbook is the guardrails. Make sure what needs to get done, by whom, and when. And I believe that if you can make that a routine and a process, you can de-risk a lot of the integration for you.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the integration as well as the way that you guys were able to de-risk upon the eventual exit of the company that you were an owner of, right? So can you walk us through that process of prepping your company for the eventual exit, and then as well the process that you ran when people were either coming to you or I don't know, did you guys use an actual business broker for that, or did you guys sell it yourself?
We sold it ourselves.
Okay, good. Well, that'll help us with perspective.
Yeah. So with playbooks aren't just for M&A, they're also, I think, for every core function of the business. And so one of the first things I did when I became president is we implemented this business operating system called EOS, which stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. There's many different flavors of similar things out there, like OKRs, Scaling Up, Rockefeller Habits, the whole 9 yards, but we subscribe to EOS. And that was about a 2-year implementation where we really, cracked down on our core values, our accountability chart and 7 org charts, our KPIs, our scorecard. Every employee in the company, really had their own scoreboard, if you will. The other part of that was process. So we had to document 80% of the process that every person and department and job function needed to do. And that helped with onboarding and growing new people. And so as we continued to grow organically and inorganically, people grew up through the organization as well. And because we had processes documented, it made just operating the business much easier. And then also when you're selling a business, if the owner and the person who's running the business at the helm, if they're not needed for the day-to-day things, you're going to get a higher multiple, right? True. And so part of that is like founder syndrome, where a lot of founders can't let go of the vine. It's their baby. They built this thing. They nurtured it, and founders are going to get, if they're looking to exit, they're going to get much better multiples when they are not needed in the business. And the way you're not needed is documenting all your processes and letting the business run itself. Because if you're someone who's on the acquiring side, you want to make sure that you're not going to be hamstrung, by saying, all right, all the corporate intelligence is sitting in one person's head. You want to make sure that there's this machine that can go operate and grow when that founder is no longer running the machine. And so that was a big thing for us, more so in our when we sold the second piece of our portfolio. And those are things that I look at on almost a daily basis. In the
you said second piece. Can we look at how you did that? So sometimes there's obviously, you could sell the entirety of the company, you can sell pieces of equity of the company, you can do an ESOP. There's ways that you can do that. But how did you guys elect to do that? So it sounds like you had various sales of your company.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So can you share with us a little bit of that process?
Yeah.
And how you guys came to that, I guess, too.
Yeah. The first transaction was really our corporate unit, our B2B business unit. That was a franchise business. We sold to a large private equity backed, education fund that was doing a roll up of others in the industry, whether they were focusing on leadership training, cybersecurity training, process improvement training, project management, tech, et cetera. And so they had their eyes on our brand for quite some time. It was a logical roll up and a logical fit. And so once that transaction happens, then really what we were left was with the consumer side of our business, which was a tech trade school that operated in the southwestern U.S. That world has high barriers of entry. It's got high regulation, and to find a buyer for that really required a strategic buyer who likely was not in our region. And with corporate education and trade schools and whatnot, there are certain licenses that you have to have. You have to be in good standing, especially if you're accepting government dollars and funding. So the people we ultimately sold to really had a very, very strong presence in the central and eastern and southeastern area of the country. They did not have really any presence in the western U.S. And we were a veteran-approved school. And so that it's hard to get that designation and that certification. And so when we exited and sold to them, what that really did is for that area of that portfolio, it doubled, if not tripled overnight. That's a situation where for the acquirers, it was much easier to buy than build. And that equation doesn't always work in every situation. So if you're out there trying to acquire businesses, you really got to consider, is it going to be more efficient and effective for me to go, build this from the ground up, or is it going to be easier for me to go ahead and acquire? I don't think there's one right answer. You just got to figure out what's right for you in your situation. So a few different kind of plays and strategies there, but it worked well for everyone.
Strategy, I think you said a little bit about, the various pieces of strategy, and then you had this exit, and then, I'd be curious to know a little bit more about obviously where you're heading now. Obviously you're using some of your skill sets, and, obviously you're working with a family office, and you guys are looking for your targets. Is that correct?
Yeah. So when I exited the first part of our business, I had a little bit more time on my hands. I was still operating our school, and I started to really get into the world of investing for a family office. We were looking at, or still look at, public companies. So we're pipe investors. We're investing in the public equities, and that was a lot of fun. It really helped me work with public company boards and public company, CEOs and investors and shareholders. And that was really that was a great learning experience for me. I can look at a company very differently now after kind of that training and education that I went through. But that is kind of on the side for me right now. I recently took over CEO of an earlier stage franchise brand, so an emerging franchise brand called Landjet. So Landjet's a young company, started in 2018, just recently started franchising. And obviously I have an experience in the franchise space. I've got a lot of people that owe generational wealth to franchising. I know a lot of people that own a lot of screw ups and mistakes, and missed at bats and opportunities due to franchising. So I understand kind of the good and bad, the ugly that comes with it. But it's an early stage brand that needs to do really just focus on a few things. One is supporting our existing franchisees. We've got 4 right now. We operate in 7 states, and what I'm trying to do is make this thing a national brand. I want to be in every state. I want to have 100 franchise units, and so this is gonna be the first time for me I actually get to start something pretty close to ground zero.
Yeah.
And so
share
I'm
with us a
excited
little
to
bit
see where
more
this-
of the implementation of some systems that maybe you've learned from your previous franchise experience, and then also speak to those out there that are the seasoned operators that may own already existing franchises, but yet they're looking to maybe take that next step in multiple cities and states or multiple locations. How would you go about creating a duplicatable system? I know you've had multiple experiences there, so.
Yeah, the beauty about franchising is kind of, I guess it's the theme of, partial theme of this discussion is it's playbooks, right? So as a franchise, operator and a franchisor, you need to have playbooks. And that was one of the things that we haven't really had dialed in at Landjet, and we're getting those dialed in right now. I look at franchise, and there's this debate that says, are franchisees entrepreneurs? I think they absolutely are. Absolutely. They're just entrepreneurs that want to de-risk entrepreneurship, right? And there's a lot of wildly successful franchisee operators that we all can learn from. But the world of franchising, you're looking at, all right, if I'm going to go pay a franchise fee, if I'm going to go pay royalties or marketing fund fees, what do I get in return? And let's say my all-in fees are 10%, 15%. Is my life 10 or 15% easier by doing it this way? And if so, you're on the positive side of that equation. And so I'm excited. This is my first time being on the franchisor side. So we're in a little bit of a different hat, but I've got familiarity with what to do and what not to do. It's not going to be easy, that's for sure. Especially running an emerging brand, a new brand. It's a new category. It's a category that doesn't exist. It's going to be.
Let's dive into that real quick. I'd be curious as to what is that category. What is your guys' differentiating factor? Now we'll get into more of just your personal, endeavor here. And then obviously how you guys out there can maybe potentially leverage the brand for a meeting or for whatever you've got to do. So yeah, share with us a little bit more about the inner workings of that company.
Yeah, so Landjet it's really this play on private jets. Think of your Gulfstream or your whatever private jet that you're a fan of. Think of that on a Mercedes Sprinter van chassis. All of our jets have got two big screens. They can fit between 6 and 8 people. They got Wi-Fi. They got desks. So it's this combination of this private plane meets a boardroom, and so you could call that a mobile office even. That's really what a land jet is. So it's a private jet on wheels, and we call our drivers pilots. So we are truly playing off of the private aviation thing. Now, what we do is we focus on the regional traveler, the person that's driving between 100 and 400 miles, or let's say, an hour or 2 hours to maybe a day long or a 2-day or a 3-day long trip. There's a gentleman that you introduced me to earlier who came from Colorado and drove 6 hours out here. So I'm going to make an assumption here, but I'm going to make an assumption that he drove himself. And so what he was not doing was meeting with other people, meeting with his team. He was probably on phone calls, but he really wasn't getting work done. And so what we've created at Landjet is this brand promise, which is save, connect, and achieve. We want all of our customers, we call our customers Landjetters. So we're trying to create this little cult. All of our customers, are saving time. They're saving dollars. If you're a corporate buyer or an exec or an EA and you've got 2-3 people that have to go on a regional trip, we all know what it's like dealing with the TSA lines. My last flight, actually, I was supposed to go to Des Moines. I had to get off the plane. I had to deplane because there was a leak on the plane. So I missed that entire trip, right? And so we all have got these stories. So I can save time. I can be productive. I can be efficient. I can also save money if I'm traveling with a group of people. So that's one pillar of our brand promise. Our next pillar is connect. We're not in Uber. We're not in Uber Black. We're not a limo service. We are this intimate setting where, if you're, let's say you're going to take your team and you're going to, go drive, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, people are either going to caravan themselves, do their own thing, or you can have everyone together and you guys are connecting. You guys are focusing on the business, on the strategy, what needs to get done. If you're doing a big pitch, if you're a marketing firm, you're doing a big pitch at a client, everyone is there putting their heads together while en route. And so you're connecting with your team, you're connecting with, and we even do leisure trips too. You're connecting with your family. If you're taking a customer out somewhere, you want to take a customer golfing, or you want to go on some sort of trip or retreat, you're connecting with who you're with. You're not going to get that type of intimacy in some other private chauffeur, solution. And then the last pillar is, achieve and get stuff done. We joke around saying a Landjet is the only place where you can get an hour's worth of work done in 20 minutes. So think about that. If you've got everyone collaborating, everyone working together, you can actually get a ton of stuff done. Now, what we learned is our close rates are over 60%. Our repeat driver rates are, I want to say, like 70, 80%. Everyone who gets their butt in a Landjet absolutely loves the experience. And so what we've learned is these professionals, whether they're law firms, doctors that are going to, from clinic to clinic, whether they're sales teams, whether they're executives, everyone who gets in a Landjet loves it and then uses a Landjet for leisure and personal reasons, whether it's going to their kids' AAU games, going to tournaments, doing tailgating, what have you. So it's really this kind of very exciting flywheel of this B to B to C, play here. And I'm just calling it the B2P business, the business to people business. So it's fun. It's fun. We've got a great team, and it's a brand new category.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to to see where we can take this.
Well, I see what you're creating, and I think it's obviously you're creating culture, which
Yes.
you've got to do with any business out there, right? If you guys are running a company, you've got to look at a little bit deeper than other than just the widget that you're selling or the service that you're providing, right? You've got to understand 100% your clientele, and then how you're obviously solving their problems. And it sounds like you got a pretty good grasp on that. And I'm excited to see where the future goes with Landjet, as well as just the other aspects of your growth as an individual and as an investor. But is there anything left that you'd like to share with the audience as far as words of wisdom for our operators out there as they take their companies to the next level?
Yeah, I had the privilege of joining a few groups throughout my career that really helped me with confidence, helped me save me from myself. One of those groups was EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. I was a member of that for 10 years. I've been in a similar group called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. I've been a member of that for 7-ish years, I think now. And these are these support groups that you go to when you've got an issue or an opportunity. And there's other ones like Vistage and whatnot, and there's also what you guys are building here.
Yeah.
Right. And every organization has kind of got their own flavor. Some are more professional growth, others are more family growth, others are personal and individual growth. And I love what you guys are doing here for a few reasons. One, I mean, M&A is what makes the world go round. that is critical to the economy. It's how you can make 1 + 1 = 3. Nowhere else in society can you really find that, right? So I love the creativeness of M&A, but where M&A can go wrong is it's not the acquisition part of it. It's like the merger and it's the integration part of it. And so what you guys are building right here is this awesome community for people that are trying to do deal making. And everyone out there who's listening or watching, there's other people that have done what you're trying to do. We all know this. You just got to go ask for the help, and don't be afraid. I've made a career out of being the smallest fish in the pond, the dumbest person in the room, and I love putting myself in those situations. I'm excited. I was excited when I heard what you were trying to build, and I'm wildly impressed to see what you guys have been building, so that there's stickiness, there's traction here. And so I'd say go get help for all you listeners and watchers out there.
Yeah.
Help wants to be given.
Well, I'd say I'm honored to have you as one of our founding members of the Acquisition HQ Network. And if you guys out there are interested to learn a little bit more about it, what it is we're building and some of the problems that we're solving, and as well the ecosystem that is being developed, feel free to just go on over to acquisitionhq.co to learn more. On the website, you'll see more about our upcoming national conference called Acquisition Conference, as well as our councils that'll be launching very, very soon that provide, again, a regionalized effort and education for individuals that are wanting to obviously buy a company. If they already run a company, they can buy another company, and then understanding the world of M&A, just like what you said. But again, we have a bit of an exciting culture that we are also creating with more of there's fun to be had, there's travel to be had, there's access to people in different markets, cities, and whatnot throughout the nation. So we're excited about that. Thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
And if you guys, again, if you have any more questions or you'd like to hear more podcasts just like this, feel free to comment below, like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.